Curves tool will be used a few times for this edit. So directly I start with the curves and drag it below to make the image dark. Also drag the top anchor point down so that the image doesn't become too contrasty. As the structure don't need to be this dark, I will use masking to bring the light back. So go to the stacks icon on the top right, then view edits, tap the curves and then brush. With the effect applied and with the transparency value at 75, I will brush on the structure to bring back some light. Bit more tuning the curves to make the image darker. Here you can see the red mask after toggling the eye icon where the effect is applied. Now sharpening the image by adding structure in details menu. And with masking, applying it only on the building. Again curves, this time brighten the highlights and applying it on the top corner to give a bit of moonlight effect. Now to selectively add light to the windows, with curves first I will drag the RGB curve to the left to add as much as light as possible. Now to add yellow, I will drag the blue curve towards right because basically yellow is the opposite of blue. Now to make it more orangish, I will add a bit of red by dragging the red curve to the left. With masking and with the effect disabled and the brush value at 100, I will zoom the image as much as possible to get the precise selection and brush on the windows where the effect is to be applied. If you overdo it, you can always change the brush value to 0 and erase the effect. I will also apply the effect on the front of the building. To add fluorescent light effect, with curves drag the RGB curve left to brighten and also the blue curve. With masking, apply it here. If you feel the color is too much, come back to the curves and tune the blue curve. Now to brighten the lights a bit more, I will increase the highlights in Tune Image. Also a bit of saturation. And apply it on the building with masking. So here are the changes after each effect applied. First I need to separate the leaves on the tree from the rest of the image, basically trying to make the leaves completely white and the rest black. Starting in Tune Image, increasing the saturation to the maximum, which will help in getting a nice contrast later. Now I need to make the sky around the tree dark, which will help to separate the tree from the background. Using selective filters, placing one here and turning the brightness around to -100. Copying the same and pasting it all around to make sure the sky surrounding the tree is dark. Going to the black and white filter, choosing the color where we get maximum contrast between the tree and the sky. Choosing the orange option, which works best here. Now to make the sky completely black, using curves, I'm gonna darken the image till the sky turns completely black by moving the lower part of the curve towards right. Next, to make the grassy part completely black, using curves again, I'm gonna drag the top point completely down to make the image black. Then with masking, tapping on the stacks icon, View Edits, Curves and Brush. Here with the black effect disabled and with the brush value set at 100, brushing on the grassy part to reveal the black effect. Making sure to get a precise selection by zooming in and brushing. Now we have separated the leaves on the trees with the rest of the image. Now to get the color a golden look, with curves again, I'm gonna drag the blue curve down to add some yellows. Then adding a little magenta by dragging the green curve down a bit. Applying and saving this, which will be later needed. Now I'm gonna add some blur with the lens blur tool. Moving the radial blur out of the way to make sure the tree is completely blurred with default values. I'm gonna save this. Coming back to the same filter, this time increasing the blur strength to 100. In Tune Image, I'm gonna add more brightness and saturation. Saving this. We have got all the images saved which would be needed to get the final result. So now I'm gonna revert to get back to the original state. Now to get the image to a dark setting. Going to Tune Image, bringing down the brightness, also saturation. I'm gonna make the image a little cooler by reducing the temperature in white balance menu. Making the image a bit more darker using curves. Now using double exposure, I'm gonna add the second image we saved with a little blur and choose the lighten blend mode and apply it. Again with the double exposure tool, This time adding the first saved image of the golden leaves with the add blend mode, which gives these leaves a golden light. Double exposure again, this time adding the last saved image with the maximum blur and select the light and blend mode. Decreasing the opacity to reduce the intensity a bit. Then with masking, applying it selectively with different values of transparency. Next, to get some light underneath the tree, increasing the brightness and warmth. Then with masking, carefully applying it on the part below and around the tree. More tuning with the brush tool. Dodging on the parts where we added light just now. Making it more brighter. Also adding more temperature by brushing on the same areas. Adding more color by increasing temperature in white balance. And applying it with masking. Now with the double exposure tool, I'm gonna add an image of the moon. Decreasing the size and placing it around here. Setting the opacity to 100. With masking, brushing on the part where the moon is located to reveal it. Now to add more ambient light around the moon, lifting the blacks with some added brightness in curves. With masking, applying it around the moon. The final result here. First I will apply a little bit of contrast using curves. Go to curves and apply the soft contrast preset. Next I will apply the black and white filter. And here in the color options, I'll try to choose a color which gives the image a more contrasty look. So I'll try to apply orange here. Here it takes orange as the brightest and the opposite color the darkest. So as the image has more orange in it, I'll apply orange here. But I want the sky here to be dark. So what I will do is go back to the curves, and next I will apply a selective filter here and saturate the sky a bit. So adding more blue. I'll try the maximum and apply it. And if you go back to the black and white, here you can see the sky becoming darker because the opposite of orange is blue. So orange will be the brightest and the blues are the darkest. So it looks better now, but I still want the bottom of the image to be more dark. So I will again go back to the black and white, the latest black and white layer, and with the stacks brush I will just erase the bottom part of the image, erase the mask of the bottom part, and apply it. So next I will apply the black and white filter again, and here I will choose blue. As the orange is the opposite of blue, maybe reds and oranges, yellow, all are opposite of blue, they become darker. So here you can see the bottom part becoming more dark now. I will apply this. As I am applying some color splash here, some color to the idols here, I will go back to the first black and white filter and choose the stacks brush and erase the filter here. This will take a bit of time, so I'll fast forward it. Just make sure to zoom in as much as possible to get a precise selection. So I will apply this. So go back to the latest black and white filter and I will remove the effect here on top of the idols and apply it. To make it more interesting, I will apply the vintage filter to make the image dark. With the preset 12, I'll just apply this and go to masking, that is the stacks icon, view edits, vintage and brush, and remove the filter on the idols. Just brush it on the idols and also maybe the pillars here. So you can see here where the mask is applied and removed, and I will apply this. Next I will do a bit of dodging in the brush tool. Go to brush and with the value at 5 I will just brush it on the pillars to make them a little bright or make them pop a little. Also the idles a bit. You can take your own time and fine tune it. I will apply more contrast by going to curves again and with the default preset of soft contrast and apply it. To make the image look more interesting, I will try to brighten the sky around the middle. So I will go back to the selective filter here and apply one more selective filter and brighten it and decrease the saturation, removing the blues here. And I will apply this. So this should make the sky a little bright around the center. So here it is. So looks a lot better, and I will try to add one more selective filter on the idols here. So I will place it on the idol and select all the 4 idols and increase the saturation, also structure. This is the final image. So here you can see the original and the edits on each filter after each filter applied. So before and after. We are going to start with basic tuning in Tune Image menu. Decreasing highlights for more details, especially in the clouds here. Also shadows to make the overall image a little darker. Now we are going to add some selective filters to brighten the light source. One here on the main source. Couple more here to reveal the hidden light on the edges of the mountains. Going to masking screen to fine tune especially around these edges. Next we are going to create some colors with curves. Trying here to add some blues to the clouds. Dragging the blue curve towards left. Also adding some turquoise by dragging the red curve down to make the blues look more natural. Going to the masking screen. With the effect enabled, removing the effect in the foreground and the mountains. With curves again, I'm going to add a lot of magenta by dragging the green curve down. Making a curve here so that it doesn't affect the shadows too much. Also adding yellows by dragging the blue curve down. This gives sort of an orangish tone. Opening curves again, lifting the blacks just a little. In the masking screen, applying it just around here to give it a little haze. For more color and brightness, lifting the blacks again, this time a lot. Adding magenta and yellow. Going to masking screen and applying it for more light. Next, in tune image, I'm gonna brighten the image and add a lot of warmth. In the masking screen, first with 50% brush opacity, just tapping around here to create a brighter warm light. Then with 100% brush opacity, tapping just here to create the main light source. Going to the vintage filter, selecting preset 12 to give the image some vignetting, which also gives some pop to the overall image. I have not considered editing the foreground here as we are going to replicate the reflection of the background. To create it, we are going to first go to the rotate tool, flip the image horizontally to get the mirror effect, then rotate it to 180 degrees. Save this as a separate copy. Also delete this last effect applied. As there is not enough space here in the foreground to add the saved image, I'm going to use the expand tool and expand it at the bottom couple of times. Now with the double exposure tool, adding the saved flipped image and dragging it down. Also making it smaller and aligning it to get the perfect reflection. Increasing the opacity to 100. Going to the masking screen, removing the top half of the image to reveal the original edited image. Now to give it a subtle effect of it being reflected on a lake, I'm going to add blur with the lens blur filter, changing it to linear mode. Moving it to the top so that the blur effect is total on the bottom half. With masking, enabling it just on the bottom half. This gives it a nice effect of landscape reflecting on a lake. We are going to start with some basic tuning by increasing the shadows to recover details in the darker parts. and reducing the highlights for details in the sky. Zooming in, you can see details lost in the beard here. So we'll go to masking by tapping on the stacks icon on the top right, view edits, tune image and brush. Here with the effect enabled and the brush value at 0, removing the effect on the beard. You can toggle the eye icon to see where the mask is removed. Next in curves, I'm first gonna darken the image by dragging the curve towards right. Dragging the top point down to make the image look not too contrasty. Then with masking, carefully removing the effect on the face to give it more prominence. Zooming in to the maximum to get a precise selection and brushing out the effect. Also masking out around the boatman. Also around left part of the landscape where the sunlight is coming from. Next, few selective filters to pop parts of the image. First one on the boatman to give more brightness and contrast. A couple on these mountains to remove the hazy look by decreasing the brightness. Another couple of filters to give some color to the sunset. Also one on the board for more structure. Now I'm gonna apply my favorite vintage filter with the preset whirl. Increasing the vignette strength. Also the stride strength to darken the image. Then with masking, we'll remove the effect to pop the main subject. Looks like it is too dark, so going back to decrease the vignette strength. Removing the mask around the lamp and on the left part of the image. Now to give more brightness to the face, I'm going to use the brush tool. Here with the value of the dodge and burn at 5, brushing on the face to make it look like the light from the lamp is hitting the face. Also adding warmth by choosing the temperature option. Next, to give more light to the lamp, using curves, I'm going to crush the blacks by dragging the low point of the RGB curve up. Then add a lot of yellow by dragging the blue curve, which is opposite of yellow, towards right. Adding some red to the mix. Then with masking, applying it around the light source on the lamp. Little more brightness and some color. Coming back to the brush tool for some more dodging on the face for more pop. To give overall warmth to the image for an evening look, increasing the temperature and adding some red tint. Now for some contrast to the foreground by increasing the brightness to the highlights. Then with masking, applying it on the foreground. Next, for some selective sharpening around the board by increasing the structure and applying it with masking. A little more tuning the mask in the vintage filter. So here are the changes after each edit. And the final result. We are gonna try replicating motion blur on this image. It works pretty well in certain cases considering we are editing on mobile. Starting with basic edits to recover details. In tune image, increasing saturation for more color. Reducing highlights. And also shadows to give the image more contrast. With curves, I'm gonna try correcting some colors. You can notice a slight red tint in the image, bringing down a bit. Also green. I'm gonna save this. To create motion blur, first I have to remove the motorcycle rider to get better results. So trying the healing tool here. Not working well here. I'm gonna close this. Now I'll try replicating cloning tool from Photoshop to get rid of the motorcycle. Going to double exposure tool, I'm gonna add the last saved image. It is added here. Now I'm gonna move it to the right, maintaining the alignment on the lane. Trying here to get the sample of the road from the new image on the motorcycle underneath. Increasing the opacity to 100. Applying it. Then going to masking screen. Tapping on the stacks icon, view edits, the latest double exposure and brush. Here with the double exposure hidden and with the brush value set at 100, brushing on these parts to reveal the road applied from the new image. Trying to clear the head here. There is still some parts of this motorcycle left. Again saving this as a copy. Adding the same as a new double exposure image. Again moving and aligning it further to the right. Repeating the steps to clear the road. Repeating the same step again to completely clear the road of the motorcycle. Here we have not got the perfect result, but this should be enough to get the final look. To replicate the motion blur effect, I'm going to use the perspective tool and select the scale option and drag the image horizontally, which basically stretches the image from the center. Repeating the same till I get the desired motion blur effect. After repeating the perspective tool 4 times, adding the earlier saved image with the double exposure tool, increasing the opacity to 100, going to the masking screen. Here with the effect disabled and brush value at 100, just brushing in the middle to reveal the rider. Then with brush value set at 0, carefully brushing out around the rider and the motorcycle to reveal the motion blur effect behind. I'm gonna keep the soft shadow which gives the image a more natural look. To remove that spot on the left, you can use the earlier cloning method if healing tool doesn't give the desired results. The changes after each effect applied. And the final result. After importing this image to Snapseed, first I need to separate background from the foreground to make it easier to add a new image as a background. For that I need to try making the foreground completely black and the background white. First I'm gonna apply black and white filter and select blue in the color options. This makes the warm colors more dark, in this case the foreground. Also adding contrast. With curves I'm gonna add high contrast. Trying here to make the foreground completely black and the background white. There are still white spots remaining in the foreground. To make them black, with curves, dragging the top right point completely down to make the image black. Then with masking, with the effect disabled and brush value at 100, brushing on the white spots to get the foreground completely black. For the final look which I intend, the foreground needs to be more dark. So here going back to the original step, then opening curves, I'm gonna darken the image. Also adding some reds and yellows for the evening colors. Going to the masking screen. I'm gonna get back the brightness on the main subject. I'm not worried about the background here as that part will be excluded anyway, which you will know later. Also bringing some brightness back here where there will be some evening light falling there. I'm gonna save this and also remove this effect by deleting it. Coming back to the last step where the image is completely black and white. Using the double exposure tool, I will add the last saved image and choose the blend mode add, which basically removes the added image on the white areas. Again with double exposure, I'm gonna add the image of a red sky. Choose darken mode, which makes the added image less intensive in the darker areas, but completely visible on the white parts from the previous effect. Dragging and placing it to make only the sky part visible in the background. With masking, removing some remnants of the sky image in the foreground. Now to add more light at the edge, I'm going to use curves, increasing brightness, also adding greens and reds, which combined add some yellows to the image. With masking, applying the effect around the right horizon here. Now adding image of the clouds using double exposure. The original was a color one. I turned it into a black and white, applied contrast and had saved it. After adding, placing it so that the clouds are just above the main subject. Taking time here to get it as intended. Setting the opacity to 100. With masking, removing the parts other than the clouds. Carefully working on the edges to make it look a bit more natural. I'm gonna add couple of selective filters to make the clouds more darker. Going to masking screen, making sure that the darkening effect did not apply on the foreground. Next, adding the image of the Milky Way. Placing it more towards the top, setting the opacity to 100, with masking, with the effect hidden, revealing the night sky where we placed it. Working a little more to get the placement and the masking right. Applying the vintage filter with preset 12. Decreasing the vignette strength just a little. Going to the masking screen, trying here to make only the top parts a bit dark. I'm going to make the clouds more darker using selective filters. Now to the brush tool for some dodging. With the dodge and burn value set at +5, brushing on the subject to make him a little more brighter to get some pop there. Also a bit on the rocks too. Going to the Tune Image menu now, adding more brightness to the highlights. Also making image more warm by increasing warmth. With masking, removing the warmth effect in the night sky. The changes made after each effect. And the final result. As we will be replacing the sky here, the first step is to make it as bright as possible. To do that selectively, the easy way is using the selective filters. We are going to start by adding one on this blue part of the sky. Make it as bright as it takes, also reducing the saturation. One here on the orangish part, again increasing the brightness. One here in these gaps of the trees. Couple more around the horizon. You can notice the brightness has leaked into the foreground. We will deal with that later. Also one here on the darker clouds. One on these hills will make it dark a bit. Now going to the masking screen, we'll make sure to remove any brightness which was leaked into the foreground. You can repeat the same steps to make the sky more whiter. Or you can just select copy and then insert, which will repeat the last filters used. So we have almost a completely white sky here. Now with Tune Image, I'm going to decrease the shadows. This step is to make only the parts around the horizon darker. So in the masking screen, removing this effect on the bottom parts. Now using double exposure, I'm gonna add a new stock sky image which I had downloaded separately. Moving it a little up so that the sun is just at the edge of the hills. Changing the mode to darken, which makes it visible only on the brighter parts of the image below. So going to masking screen and brushing out the sky image in the foreground. Just a little more precise around the horizon. Now to match the foreground with the light and colors of the background, starting with curves, just darkening the image a bit by dragging the curve towards right. Going to masking screen and applying it on the darker part of the sky a bit. Also at the bottom where the light won't be hitting much. Again with curves, now lifting the blacks to make the overall image brighter. Also adding more red and green for that orangish tone. Going to masking screen, applying it around the sun to make that part more brighter. Next, applying vintage filter for a dark effect. Applying it on the lower part of the image. Some selective filters now. To make this crop more shiny, adding some brightness and contrast. Also one around here. We'll make this part in the background a little more dark. One here to make it pop a bit. To further pop the foreground, adding some hard contrast with curves. And applying it only on this part. Now for some subtle touch-ups with the brush tool. Some dodging around these areas to make it a little more brighter. Adding more saturation. Also more temperature around here to match it with the surroundings. Few more selective filters to give final touch-ups to the image. Reducing the saturation on these blue parts of the sky. Darkening this bright part of the sky. Little touch up on the leaves. Making this area a little more dark. And the final result. After importing, first I'm going to try changing the background. Using the double exposure tool, I'm going to add this image of the mountains, making it bigger and placing it at the desired position. Setting the opaqueness to 100 and applying it. Now to reveal the original image, some masking work is needed. Tapping on the stacks icon on the top right, View Edits, tap double exposure and brush. First with the added background image hidden. With the brush transparency set at 100, I'm gonna roughly brush out at the top to reveal it. With the brush value at 0, again brushing roughly on the subject and the foreground to disclose it. Now zooming in as much as possible and with the brush value at 100, brushing out carefully on the outer edges of the main subject to fine-tune the selection. This will take a lot of time, so fast forwarding it. Now to get the flowery foreground selection, first gonna try carefully to reveal the flowers. Then fine-tuning it by brushing out the greens. It is certainly not easy to get the seamless edges here. With a few tricks we can get better results, which I will try later. Toggle the red mask to check if the mask is applied correctly. Next, to darken the lower part of the image in curves, I'm going to drag the top point of the curve down and also the middle part towards right to darken the overall image. Then with masking, with the effect applied, removing the effect over the top parts of the image. Also we'll try to darken the left part of the sky a little with the brush value at 50. Trying here to give the effect where the sunlight is coming from the right edge. Now for some selective filters. A couple to brighten the greens on the top part of the foreground. One on the faces where I will try to smoothen the skin by reducing the structure. Little brightness and some saturation. More brightening the right part of the sky. And want to give more color to the blues in the sky. Now I'm gonna try to give some blurriness to the background. Selecting the lens blur tool, changing to linear filter, moving to the bottom so that the foreground is in focus and the background more blurry. Reducing the blur strength just a bit. Then with masking, removing the blur on the subject carefully by brushing out the effect. Also at the bottom on the foreground. Next I'm going to try to give some color to the brighter parts of the sky. With the curves I'm going to lift the blacks, then add a bit of yellow by dragging the blue curve towards right. Also a lot of red. Then with masking, first roughly brushing on the sky to reveal the effect, then fine-tuning it. Now to hide the uneven selection on the edges of the foreground, I'm gonna try adding a hazy effect. Again with curves, crushing the blacks, adding yellows and lot of reds. A bit different color tuning than the one we applied in the sky. With masking, applying it. To give more pop to the flowery foreground, selectively applying hot contrast preset with the curves. Just a bit on the sky too. Next, to give some color to the overall image, adding a bit of red tint in white balance. A couple of selective filters. First on the face to tone down the reddish skin tones. Also some contrast. And also more color to the brighter part of the sky. The changes after each edit. And the final result. Basically, we will be getting the colors from the image itself, especially at the center of the image horizontally. To get the desired colors from any part of the image, we need to move those parts to the center. I will be using double exposure for it. Adding the same image again here. Currently I need those orangish and red colors. We'll come back to the colors on the lady later. So dragging the image just a tad down so that only the orangish and red parts of the image are covered in the middle. Now setting the opacity to 100. Making sure to get the right part of the image at the center. Applying it. Now for getting that effect, I'm gonna use the perspective tool. In these options, selecting scale. Now we are gonna scale it vertically. So just need to drag it from top to bottom, which basically stretches the image vertically. Repeating the same process few more times. I'm gonna just stop before it starts to look like vertical lines. Now it has a nice colored curtain effect. I'm gonna apply this and save it as a separate image. Now I need to get the colors on the lady. Basically at around the shoulder level, where we can get the major shades of color from the hair, skin and the clothes. Just going back to the first step where the image was added with double exposure and moving the image so that the shoulder of the lady is almost at the center of the image. Now just need to move to the last perspective effect applied. We can go directly there. I'm gonna apply one more perspective effect to make the colors a little more smoother. Saving this again. Next, to get the green colors at the right edge, going back and moving the image to get the part of the trees in the middle. Going to the last perspective effect to get the green colors. Saving this as a separate copy. Now I will revert the image to its original state. On the original image, I'm going to use double exposure to add the first saved image and setting the opacity to 100. Going to the masking screen. With the effect enabled and setting the brush value to 0, I'm gonna brush out the effect on the lady and at the bottom so that it looks like the colors are rising above the same colored parts below. Currently concentrating on the orangish and the red parts of the trees. Now adding the second image saved using double exposure. Here trying to retain the colors on the lady. In the masking screen, hiding the effect and brushing just above the areas of the lady to reveal those colors. trying to get a soft selection around the face of the lady. To get the red colors on the right, I'm going to use the first saved image again with double exposure and drag it to the right so that the red parts are on the same colored parts of the tree. Masking it. Now to get the green parts, adding the last saved image and dragging it so that the brighter greens overlap around the edge. Masking work to retain those colors. Also using the same image to get some greens around the left part. To make it more interesting, using selective filters, I'm gonna add one here on the reds to make that part a bit more brighter. Copying and pasting the same on these greens. Also on the blues. Gives a nice shiny curtain effect. The final result here. So for this image, I will do few edits with curves tool to get the desired look. Before that, I will do a precise selection of the main subject with masking, which would be done for only one time, but the same selection will be applied on subsequent edits with the curves. You will see how. First, I will start by going to the curves tool and applying it without making any edits. Then with masking, that is, tap the stacks icon on the top right, view edits, tap the curves and then brush. Here I will try to do a precise selection of the main subject. With the effect not applied and the brush value at 100, I will brush on the subject. Zoom in especially around the edges to make the selection very precise. This will take a bit of time. Also, selecting the hair might be tricky because getting the selection of the strands of hair on the outer edges is almost impossible. So I'll just try to make the selection just where the hair is pretty opaque. So I have made the selection here. Now I will just duplicate this curves edit by going to the 3-dot menu and copying and inserting, which also copies the selection mask. Now to the first curves again. I will try to darken the background by dragging the curve down, then apply it. As the selection is still the main subject, I'll go here and toggle the selection so the selection now is the background. So the background is darker now. Now for the latest curves copy. I will apply the soft contrast preset, which obviously is applied only on the main subject because of the already saved selection mask. Next I will make one more copy, this time to add some orangish tint to the skin by selecting the red color option and dragging it upwards, then blue downwards. As the opposite of blue is yellow, it adds yellow to the subject here. Next another copy again, this time to brighten the subject by dragging the RGB curve upwards. One more copy of curves. Here I'll again add red and yellow, this time to make the hair blonde, also a little brightness. Then go to masking and brush the hair for selection. And apply it. This time I will add a new curves effect and add some blue shade to the shadows by dragging the lower point of the blue curve a little upwards. One more effect in curves, this time to add some faded effect to the overall image. Drag the lower point upwards to crush the blacks, upper point downwards to crush the whites, which would make the whites little more grayish to give the image a faded look. So these are the edits done after each curves effect. And finally, before and after. This image is a raw DNG file. We have a dedicated develop menu available only when editing DNG files. Here I am gonna increase shadows to recover details from the darker parts. Also structure to add a little texture to the image. I'm gonna save this as a separate copy. For best results, instead of directly blurring the image, I'm gonna start with first removing the subject. We'll try the healing tool to do it. Trying here to make a very precise selection to remove the subject here. Don't need to mind the not so clean healing in the middle as it will be covered later anyway. Now to make the background blur. With the lens blur filter, changing the filter to linear mode. Coming back to see where exactly the subject is standing and placing the filter just there. Manually decreasing the space where the blur effect is not present. increasing the transition a little, trying here to give a gradual depth of field. Also increasing the blurriness. Next, I'm going to add some bright light in the background with Curves tool. Lifting the blacks and adding more brightness here. Also adding reds and greens to give an orangish tone to it. The reason why I am doing this before adding the main subject is to not get this bright light on the subject. Going to the masking screen, tapping on the stacks icon, view edits, curves and brush. Here with the effect disabled and brush value at 100, zooming out, which gives the brush a soft feather. Tapping around the top left to reveal the effect. Applying it. Now with double exposure tool, adding the earlier saved image and setting the image opacity to 100. Going to the masking screen, roughly revealing the image. Then zooming in to get a precise selection around the edges. Toggling the eye icon gives a red colored mask. This may take a lot of time as it's a lot of manual work here. Zooming in as much as possible and brushing around the edges to get a fine selection. We'll speed up the video here. Making sure the selection is right, applying it. Next, to give some facelift to the face, applying a selective filter. Increasing brightness and contrast. You could try the portrait filter too for some nice presets there. Going back and correcting the masking here. Leaving these around for the shadows to remain there. Now for some color grading. Going to the white balance menu, adding temperature, also decreasing the tint just a little to add some greenish tones. Going to curves, we'll try adding some purplish tones here to the shadows, just a personal preference. So here's a bright background look. Looks like the main source of light is hitting the background. Going back to the earlier applied curves effect and changing the masking here for a different look. Now to change it to a dark background, resetting the curves. lifting the blacks a little and darkening the overall image. Adding some turquoise and magenta. Also increasing blue tones for a cooler background. Applying only to the background with masking. Revealing the subject. The light source seems completely changed with an artificial light hitting the subject. There are a few ways to mask out the main subjects here to create a silhouette effect. To make the masking easier, first I'm going to increase the saturation and brightness to the maximum in Tune Image menu. Next, with the black and white filter, I'm gonna try making the main subject dark. To do that, I'm gonna choose blue color in the color options, which makes the blues in the image the brightest and the opposite yellows the darkest, which is the main intention here. Now we can go into the main masking work. With curves, I'm gonna drag the lower point towards top to turn the image completely white. Next, going to the masking screen. Tap on the stacks icon, View Edits, Curves and Brush. Here with the effect hidden and the brush value set at 100, we are going to basically paint white around the main subject. As we turn the surroundings very bright, the masking work should be easier. Here minutely brushing around the edges. This will certainly take a lot of time, just need to be precise around the edges. Other areas we can zoom out and paint, which should be easier. Here I will retain the ground, also the basketball pole. Applying this. Now to make the main parts darker, I'm going to use curves and drag the RGB curve towards right until all the grey parts become completely black. You can notice the black spots from the earlier bit of shabby masking work. We can remove those by again going to curves, turning the image to white. in the masking screen, brushing over those spots to remove them. There are still some light grey spots. Using curves, I'm going to increase the brightness in the highlights to turn these spots to white. Now to turn those white spots on the main subject to black, I'm going to turn the image to black with the curves tool by dragging the top right point to the bottom. With masking, brushing on these spots to make them black. I'm going to leave basketball hoop as it is for a unique effect. Next, I'm going to add the background using double exposure tool. Adding the image of the sun here. Changing the blend mode to subtract, which works best here. I'm going to enlarge it to make the background completely have this orangish evening color. Missed a step earlier, going back to the layer where we turn the image completely white. Masking on the ball to remove it. Now again adding the earlier sun image using double exposure tool. This time zooming out completely to get the sun almost exactly in the position of the ball. Increasing the opacity to 100. Going to the masking screen. Tapping on the part of the sun to reveal it. To get some ambient light around the sun, lifting the blacks using curves to create some haze. With masking, applying it around the sun. One more step remains here. The lower part should be darker, using curves again, this time to make the image dark. Applying the effect on the lower parts using masking. The final result is here. Thanks for watching.